so as not to be a distraction during the proceedings, please. And we request your attention for a moment as the Hyatt Regency advises of their safety procedures in the event of an emergency. Your attention, please.
Welcome to the Hyatt Regency Trinidad. Your safety and well-being during your time with us is our first main priority. Therefore, it is essential and necessary that you are familiar with our emergency evacuation procedures. Should it become necessary to evacuate the hotel, a continuous siren will sound, followed by an audible instruction to evacuate the building. When you hear, "May I have your attention please," over the public announcement system, you should proceed to the exit closest to you and make your way to the muster point, proceeding east along the waterfront towards the western end of the Femme du Chalet, better known as the Breakfast Shed. In the event of an earthquake, do not run out of the building. Stay calm, drop, cover, and hold on. If evacuation is required, please listen for instructions via the hotel's PA system for the earthquake evacuation route and muster point. Associates from Hyatt will assist you with evacuating. Once outside, conduct a head count for your group to ensure that everyone is accounted for. Should you believe someone is missing, notify the Hyatt associate in your area. Do not return to the building for any reason until the fire service has stated it is safe to do so. Thank you. Be safe and have an enjoyable time with us.
Thank you very much. This afternoon, the national anthem of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago will be performed by Mr. Akil George, who is a member of the Access Center staff, Ministry of Digital Transformation, and a member of the Massey All-Stars Steel Orchestra. Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you. Please remain standing for the invocation. We invite to lead in the opening prayer, representing the Interreligious Organization of Trinidad and Tobago, Reverend Father Martin Serju.
To all honorary dignitaries present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I read to you from the Book of Wisdom, chapter 7, verses 17 to 22. For it is he who gave me unerring knowledge of what exists, to know the structure of the world and the activity of the elements, the beginning and end of middle times, the alternations of the solstices and the changes of seasons, the cycles of the year and the constellations of the stars, the nature of animals and the tempers of wild beasts, the powers of spirits, and the reasonings of men and women, the variety of plants, and the virtues of roots. I learned both what is secret and what is manifest, for wisdom, the fashioner of all things, taught me. Let us pray. Creator God, source of all wisdom and learning, teach us to move beyond ourselves and to set out in search of truth in this challenging but exciting digital age. Teach us to listen, not to entertain prejudices or draw hasty conclusions. Teach us to go where no one else will go, for your Spirit, ever wise, all-embracing, is with us. To take the time needed to understand, to pay attention to the essentials, not to be distracted by the superfluous, to distinguish deceptive appearances from the truth. Give us a comprehensive and consistent ethic governing digital leadership, recognizing people before things, and that the laborer has priority over the labor done. Grant us the grace to recognize your dwelling places in our world, and may digital leadership in the Caribbean serve the needs of regional bonding, solidarity, social justice, and a flourishing of life for all. Amen.
Thank you, Father Martin Sergio. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to sit. Honorable Ministers of the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and members of the Senate, Honorable Caribbean Ministers with portfolio responsibility for digital transformation, telecommunications, and ICT, distinguished heads of missions and members of the diplomatic corps, Mr. Gervais Warner, President and CEO of the Massey Group of Companies and feature speaker, Secretaries General, executive officers, and heads of regional and international organizations, senior government officials of Trinidad and Tobago and participating Caribbean countries, esteemed members of the business community, academia, and civil society, senior executives and staff of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the Ministry of Digital Transformation, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and welcome to the Hyatt Regency and the Digital Leadership in the Caribbean Conference, Rethinking Caribbean Citizenship in the Digital Age, Data, Rights, and Innovation. The Caribbean region is continuing to show meaningful progress in the ways in which governments conduct business and provide public services through the adoption of digital transformation strategies. The Ministry of Digital Transformation in Trinidad and Tobago, on behalf of the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, in partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB, and the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, the CTU, wishes to create an enabling space for the region's most senior policymakers with portfolio responsibility for digitalization, in which they can address collaboratively some of the most common impediments faced in the digital transformation of the state. By contributing from their unique set of competencies, knowledge, and professional experiences, these executives learn from each other and enhance the knowledge base for Caribbean digital policy and practice. In the near future, can the social contract between Caribbean citizens and the state be reimagined as an outcome of digital policy? This session invites a public discourse and critique of ICT governance in the region towards identifying priorities for a viable regional strategy to expedite creation of a CARICOM single ICT space. Delivering remarks this afternoon is Mr. Tariq Ali, General Manager, Caribbean Country Department of the IDB. Mr. Ali has over 20 years of extensive experience in corporate finance, spanning debt capital markets, deal origination, syndication, and structuring. He previously held several roles, including Assistant Vice President and Vice President across indigenous financial institutions in Trinidad and Tobago before he joined the First Citizens Group in 2011. At the First Citizens Group, he held the positions of Head of Capital Markets, Assistant General Manager, Corporate and Investment Banking Unit, and before joining the IDB, General Manager, Corporate and Investment Banking Unit, where he had overall responsibility for the unit's private sector, Latin American, Government of Trinidad and Tobago, and debt capital markets business units. Mr. Ali attained a bachelor's degree in accounting from the University of the West Indies and a master's degree in business administration from the Edinburgh Business School, Heriot-Watt University in Scotland. To deliver remarks, ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome to address you, Mr. Tariq Ali.
The Honorable Penelope Beckles-Robinson, Minister of Planning and Development of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The Honorable Hassel Bacchus, Minister of Digital Transformation of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Gervais Warner, President and Group CEO of the Massey Group of Companies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and good afternoon. I'm really happy to be here today, not only because I live outside of Trinidad and in Jamaica now, so I'm at home, but more importantly, to engage on this very important issue, since we all know how much digital technologies have transformed our lives and the potential they hold to take us even further. However, while digital transformation accelerates progress, this shouldn't happen unchecked. With each new development, we must consider how it will affect us, our ways of living, working, and organizing our societies. The Digital Leadership Summit, which we held earlier today and that continues, is an opportunity for us to center Caribbean perspectives, realities, and visions in this ongoing global conversation. But why digital transformation? At the IDB, we are focused on becoming more effective on improving lives of Latin America and the Caribbean. And so we believe that countries can and should use digital transformation to empower the private sector, improve public sector services, and strengthen institutions and governance. This is particularly important in the Caribbean, where IDB research shows that the potential positive impact of economic growth in relation to the associated costs of investing in closing the digital infrastructure gap with the OECD countries is huge. And I'm about to give you two statistics. The benefits could range from just over double the associated costs in the case of Guyana and as large as 58 times for Barbados. Investing in digital infrastructure will not only improve connectivity, but also public services, educational opportunities, and small business growth. With these investments, Caribbean countries will be positioned to capitalize on the development gains that digital transformation can bring, such as better integration into global value chains, more secure cross-border information sharing, greater productivity, and increased unemployment. But what is the IDB doing in the Caribbean within this digital space? We have been working with our Caribbean member countries to improve digital infrastructure, digitize processes, and modernize policies. And I'll give a couple examples. For example, in Jamaica, where I reside, we're helping implement a national identification system, or as we affectionately call it in Jamaica, the NIDS, And there was a lot of conversation around this morning around the importance of this digital ID. And the NIDS will help cut bureaucracy, reduce transaction costs associated with identity verification by as much as 80%, and improve the delivery of government services. In Barbados, 4 million public service records and counting have been digitized from more than a dozen government ministries, agencies, under an IDB-financed Reform Public Sector Modernization Program. And of course, right here in Trinidad and Tobago, digital transformation is at the heart of how the IDB is working with the government to achieve economic growth. In fact, the country representative in Trinidad, Ms. Karina Coburn, will frequently tell you the main pillar of our country strategy in Trinidad is based on digital transformation. We've been supporting exciting projects such as the Smart City Initiative in Arima. Minister Beckles, I know this one is very dear to you, and the digital preservation and reimagining of cultural art forms and folklore with the Tamana Animation Production Factory. These innovations are proving the point that going digital can truly be transformative. Yet such change is synonymous with disruption. And yes, some discomfort and disorganization. Let's remember that those we intend to benefit from these digital reforms may not have the capacity to do so, or they may be initially reluctant to embrace new approaches. Minister Bacchus, I remembered your comment this morning that, even if we have full coverage of bandwidth, we need to look at other components that are more determinant of if we have effective coverage in the country. Therefore, we cannot overlook the importance of change management, stakeholder consultation, training, and the spirit of humility as we embrace technological reforms. At the IDB, we support countries' national digital agendas, so they are ready for broader collaboration at a regional level, which is very important to us. Our Government Digital Transformation Guide, which was presented earlier today, is an excellent resource for anyone involved in the transition in the public sector, providing structure and step-by-step guidelines for the process. And this forum, hosted in partnership with the Government of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, allows senior policymakers to engage in robust discussion on how to best manage the digital transformation of the state. There is an importance of a rights-based framework. When we consider the issues that are commanding the attention of the Caribbean leaders, food security, data security, and of course, citizen security, an individualistic approach limits the institutional and regulatory strengthening that is possible through digital transformation. But increasingly, digital interactions bring more sophisticated considerations. Policy must work hard to maintain relevance in the face of rapid technological innovation. Now, when we talk about updating policy frameworks into the new reality, should we also be thinking about the augmented and virtual realities? That's right, the metaverse. What does a social contract look like in the metaverse? How many have you entered the metaverse? How do governments balance citizen demand for digital services with concerns around data privacy and sovereignty? And we heard that pointed in. I'm sure we're going to hear more about it. Respect for human rights is at the core of IDB's projects, and this is reflected in our current environmental and social policy framework. Our motto is improving lives and constantly reminds us that sustainable development is about people. In closing, technology is evolving rapidly. This we know, and this will not stop. There are many areas in which we need to catch up. In other areas, we must simply keep a pace. Ideally, we want to be in a position where we can anticipate to act rather than react. Our vision at the IDB is to position Latin America and the Caribbean as a space for new solutions to global challenges. Those who currently bear the responsibility of navigating these digital frontiers can be inspired by the knowledge that the region has an abundance of creativity or innovation. And just today, in a matter of a couple hours, we heard several innovative ideas that can be used. They can help us and this ingenuity to flourish in what could be a very fertile digital landscape once a right enabling environment is created. The IDB is committed to bring its expertise and other resources to support this. While artificial intelligence may be the trending topic these days, and I know we hear about it a lot, let's use our collective intelligence to identify priorities for a regional approach to digital transformation. I look forward to hearing from our expert panel this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Tariq Ali, of course, the General Manager, Caribbean Country Department at the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB. We're delighted this afternoon to have with us the Minister of Planning and Development in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Penelope Beckles-Robinson. Minister Beckles-Robinson is a Trinidad and Tobago diplomat, politician, and attorney at law, currently serving as the Minister of Planning and Development and Member of Parliament for the constituency of Arima. Minister Beckles-Robinson has an expansive political career, entering the Trinidad and Tobago Parliament in 1995 as an opposition senator. She has served as the Member of Parliament for the constituency of Arima and has held various ministerial portfolios, including Minister of Public Utilities and the Environment, Minister of Culture and Tourism, and Minister of Social Development. Minister Beckles-Robinson has also served as Trinidad and Tobago's permanent representative to the United Nations, and in representing Trinidad and Tobago, was named co-chair president of the Executive Board of UN Women in 2019, and has served as vice president of the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly. We're honored this afternoon and delighted to hear from Trinidad and Tobago's Minister of Planning and Development. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Penelope Beckles-Robinson.
So if I could ask kindly to have your leave, not to go through the entire protocol list. Thank you very much. Save and except, of course, to specially acknowledge my cabinet colleague, the Honorable Hassel Bacchus, Minister of Digital Transformation, who, of course, is responsible for organizing this really historic event. And to warmly welcome ministers from our various Caribbean islands with responsibility for digital transformation, telecommunication, and ICT, and of course, members of the diplomatic corps. The government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the governors of the IDB are grateful that renowned ICT and digital technology experts from Ukraine, India, MIT, the Atlantic Council, and other celebrated agencies have gathered in the city of Port of Spain to have open conversations on an open future for the Caribbean. This event is happening in Trinidad and Tobago just a few days after the Google Annual Developers Conference in California. Here in Port of Spain, we find ourselves convened to contemplate and envision what a future state of a CARICOM single ICT space might look like. How will it be configured? What services will it bring to citizens? What advantages of privacy will such a single ICT space bring to citizens? How will it become a vehicle for inclusion and equity? How does such a space become a point of convergence for what Richard Florida describes as the 3 T's: talent, technology, and tolerance? This morning, I was privileged to speak in Tobago on the talent-thick economy at an event hosted by Cariri. And this afternoon, I turned my attention to Florida's other 2 T's, which is technology and tolerance. As we know, discipline, production, and tolerance are the national watchwords of Trinidad and Tobago, and they encapsulate the guiding principles and values in the development of the capability of the country and its people. These deliberations are taking place against a backdrop of the CARICOM single market economy and the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas on one level. The treaty provides inter alia for integration of efforts in economic matters, coordination of foreign policy, and functional cooperation in a list of areas including labor administration and industrial relations and social security among subscribing states. But at another level, this two-day event is happening at a time when ChatGPT and Bard have been launched and when Twitter Incorporated has branded as X in a move towards becoming the everything app. The vision is for X to become the biggest financial institution in the world, a super app where users can transfer money effortlessly with a click and even earn interest. What I find most fascinating about Google's Bard is that its developers are not afraid of failure or blunders. Bard is described as a creative and helpful collaborator, one that can supercharge your imagination, boost your productivity, and bring life to your ideas. Bard is an open public experiment. It may offer inaccurate responses, and so Bard is asking developers everywhere to help Bard better by leaving feedback. So this openness to building a shared future is what I call upon all participants at this event to embrace. Many users have multiple PCs, smartphones, tablets, and cloud storage and social media accounts, scattering and complicating data storage, ownership, privacy, and security. Cabin data generated by users of EVs and battery data of EV may belong to the manufacturer depending on, of course, on the making of EV. These problems are multiplied by the fact that social media platforms offer free services. To make money, these platforms monetize user data. This contentious issue spurred the European Union to develop what is called the General Data Protection Regulation, the strictest privacy and security law in the world, I'm advised. And in the United States, of course, you have the California Consumer Privacy Act, which used the GDPR as a guide, and that actually went into effect in 2020. In response to these burgeoning legal, technological, and social issues, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, creator of the World Wide Web, has proposed what is called the solid or social linked data. It is a project that aims to decentralize the web and put data ownership back in the hands of the creators. Solid has extended the World Wide Web to include identity management, access control, and universal standards for data. The capabilities above decouple data from platforms and apps so that data is organized around individuals. His model involves solid pods or personal data stores that provide a place to access, update, and as well to share data. Solid is a third layer of the internet. Solid is an open source mediation that will reinvent the web through new decentralized, privacy-minded tools for data. Of course, here I pause and I reflect, how can Solid take the CARICOM agenda forward? One immediate response is the need for an increase in government-to-government collaboration on digital citizenship for CARICOM. Trinidad and Tobago remains open to partner with other countries to bring this into being. The next steps in integration, though, will take place through shared services, e-identity, data embassies, and, of course, cybersecurity. This meeting in Port of Spain is the first step towards creating a CARICOM single ICT space. Tomorrow morning, I'm advised that you will have the invaluable contribution from the Government of India. The CARICOM single ICT space can become the digital arm of the CARICOM single market economy. It can be an ICT-enabled borderless space that fosters trade and economic, social, and of course, cultural integration. It will require regionally harmonized ICT policies, legislation, regulations, technical standards, best practices, network readiness, and of course, increase developer density. All of this is required from open finance and digital entrepreneurship at a regional level, easier movement of people using e-identities, the right of establishment, sharing of information between governments via G2G networks created through connected national interoperability to solutions, and increased technology resilience via shared regional digital infrastructure for disaster preparedness, climate change, threat intelligence centers, and of course, early warning systems. What can a single ICT space bring to CARICOM? It can bring an enabler of CARICOM integration and development, and this is because digital technology is a fabric that has the potential to transport CARICOM. This future includes members of the Caribbean diaspora being afforded digital services through our embassies and our various missions abroad. Digital technology can therefore constitute a powerful force for Caribbean integration and a vehicle for expanding Caribbean influence through our various embassies and missions. It will require developing and adopting appropriate framework to overcome new digital trade barriers. Key policy and legislative frameworks are required across the region to facilitate the growth of technology-enabled trade, the creation of new industries and new models of public administration and service commissions. Finally, digital leadership is critical. Digital transformation requires strong leadership and commitment. At the regional level, strong leadership, commitment, and collaboration among Caribbean countries are needed to advance regional integration. In addition, co-creation among civil society and the public and private sectors remain indispensable. CEO Mr. Jewis Warner will address this shortly. In concluding, a CARICOM single ICT space is no longer just an option for regional integration. It has become the major catalyst for development. It remains part of Trinidad and Tobago's roadmap for recovery and is an essential mandate of the people of Trinidad and Tobago and a promise by the Honorable Prime Minister and the government of Trinidad and Tobago. As we undertake the task before us and exchange ideas over the next couple of days, let us be mindful that the successful establishment of a Caribbean single ICT space, or SIS, is key to the digital success of the CARICOM single market economy. I take this opportunity to wish all participants every success in advancing the digital cause of our Caribbean region. I thank you kindly for your attention.
Thank you very much to the Minister of Planning and Development, the Honorable Penelope Beckles-Robinson. Ladies and gentlemen, our feature presenter and speaker this afternoon is Mr. Jewis Warner, President and Group CEO of the Massey Group of Companies. By the time Mr. Warner has concluded his presentation to you, you'll either stand and say, wow, stand and applaud and say, more, or stand and applaud and say, this guy is really good. Suffice it to say, based on his agenda and his itinerary, he can only say it once. So when you hear it and you are so moved, it means that he would have set the stage for the panel discussion that will follow immediately after Mr. Warner's presentation. By chance, if he takes his leave after his presentation, it's perhaps based on the fact that the organization he has the distinction to lead is celebrating 100 years anniversary in 1923 when it was first formed on February 1st. So if he heads off, it's because he's got a 100-year-old company to keep going for another 100 years. Mr. Warner has been president and group CEO of the Massey Group of Companies since 2009, and prior to his appointment, he also served as the executive chairman of the group's Energy and Industrial Gases Business Unit, and has served as a director of Massey Holdings Limited since 2004, which is the year in which he joined the group. Prior to his Massey experience, he was a partner at the international management consulting firm McKinsey & Company, where he spent 11 years serving clients in the United States, Latin America, and the Caribbean across a wide range of industries. He currently serves on the Trinidad and Tobago board of Citigroup Merchant Bank Limited, the Arthur Lockjack Graduate School of Business, and United Way Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Warner is the chairman of the CARICOM Private Sector Organization. I give to you Mr. Gervais Warner.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to say all protocols observed. Our magnificent Wendell Constantine used to be a very good friend of mine. Till he set me up like this. I have a first thing I want to start off with is a confession. And it's been a very hectic time. And when I was asked to give this address, I said, no, it's not possible. I just don't have the time. But if you know Jacqueline Wilson and Gillian McIntyre, these are women that you just cannot say no to. So I am here delivering this address. And so I needed to get help. And since we're talking about digital leadership, I'm going to confess to you, I used ChatGPT, generative AI for this. So, you know, I love everything I've heard so far, right? Because it is very clear that we all appreciate that we are at a pivotal time in our history of this CARICOM experiment. We have been shouldered with, I guess, legacy of being put together, but without the systems and structures for actually to have us function really well together. It's very difficult for us to integrate. If we look at our public administration in all of our countries, we've inherited vestiges of what the English left us with. And in many cases, we've held on to that very closely, and we have enormous bureaucracies that are just tremendously difficult to work through. And the promise of digital transformation and digital integration is this unique opportunity for us to take our destiny and create it ourselves. It is a way for us to leapfrog these things that we were blessed to inherit because, you know, at some point in time they were good guardrails, but now they've become such enormous hindrances to our forward progress that this is perhaps the most important thing that we could be taking on nationally and as a region. So I'm really pleased to be here to talk about it a little bit. Now I'll have to work this clicker and this thing at the same time. Is it working? Perfect. So what's the big deal? What is the big deal about digital integration within CARICOM, digital transformation? What is the big deal about it? Well, as you heard both Minister Beckles and Tariq explain, and I am sure you heard this morning, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We all appreciate that there is a transformational opportunity for all of us. All of us. Digital transformation integration done well can actually lift everyone, even marginalized people living in rural areas. This is the opportunity for us to create economic growth through the use of technology by leveling the playing field, by reducing barriers to access, by creating the opportunities for people to show up as entrepreneurs and have access to much larger markets. There's also this opportunity. We had this regional conference on crime in the region. This is an enormous opportunity for us to build strength in the way that we cooperate around security and enhance regional collaboration on cybersecurity, on gangs and all that sort of wonderful stuff. So we know that it's something that's worth paying attention to. Well, isn't that something? Ain't that some? Huh? Try what? The wow. Okay, well, good thing I have it here. So let me talk about the things that I have in the presentation that you now are not going to be able to see. I do apologize for that breakdown. But you know, as with all major transformational initiatives, there are significant challenges associated with getting this done, right? So first of all, on top of the list is we talk about creating this, you know, regional common ICT space. But we have very uneven infrastructure across the entire region. So there's some infrastructural just barriers that we would have to solve for. There's capacity building, talking to Jackie about building capacity for taking on these types of you know, enormous, significant projects. There are huge regulatory challenges and regulatory frameworks that don't exist. Try to do anything, whether it's telecom, banking, insurance, you name it, company registration across countries in the Caribbean, you will tear your hair out. The issues that the minister spoke about data security. We have different data security laws passed in Jamaica, passed in Barbados, here in hey, something's coming up on my screen, all right. Folks, we might get it back. We have the interoperability, which Tariq spoke about, and IDB's funding assistance to get better standardization among within our ministries in a particular country, but also across countries. We have financial resources. Where do we get the money, besides the IDB, to do all this? And then we have the challenge of, okay, so am I back in charge, right? Yeah, we can move back. Yeah, that's the page. That's the page. Then there's this issue of the digital divide, right? So it is possible to do this in a very unequal fashion. We saw this over COVID, right? When school went online. And how did we help people who did not have devices, who did not have connectivity, to also be able to attend school? There's a real potential that this could actually benefit people who have access to such equipment and technology. And then the last piece of this is, of course, policy coordination and implementation. So that's a big challenge. So I fundamentally believe that this is so big that it is not a subject that we can leave to just those who are interested in the topic. We must galvanize the full support of all of the people of the Caribbean. All the people here in Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana, Antigua, you name it, Jamaica. We all need to make sure that individuals appreciate what this could mean or what this means for them. It is not sufficient for it to be a good vision of one or two politicians or 3 or 4 great ministries. This must be something that people want and will call for. And I'll speak to that a little later. I'll get a little kind of provocative. And so, yeah, you know, why is it that we still have to use our passports and go through an immigration form when we come back to Trinidad and we don't use them in Barbados or Jamaica? Why is that, right? There's no good reason. I think we even have the machines, right? It's just facts, right? So as a user, you're looking for simplification. You're looking for things made easy. Why do we have to get an appointment to get a driver's license? Why can't we just do the information online, send the money in a transaction, get a license renewed, you know? You know, one of the biggest challenges entrepreneurs, and Massey has an entity called Nudge Caribbean, where we're helping small and medium enterprises and entrepreneurs. Somebody know about it, good. You know, get a nudge up in life. And one of the challenges that small businesses face is access to market, digital inclusion, digital integration can level that playing field, giving small people, you know, much more visibility and access to larger markets. At an individual base level, the opportunity here for improving our daily life and expanding our opportunities for everyone is just tremendous. So I'm not gonna, but I think we need to spend a lot of time on this. Sometimes we just take it for granted that people will know this, but no, we need to get this down to every average citizen appreciating and calling for digital transformation because they insist that life should be easier and better. Similarly, well, you know, we in the private sector, we are absolutely, we're pressing ahead with this. We're using technology to market stuff to our customers. We've just introduced self-checkout in our supermarkets. We're pushing ahead on data mining and all of this, absolutely, 100%. So I think in the private sector, we absolutely have a full appreciation of what this could mean and what the benefit of this is, and it can't come soon enough. But it's not so easy. So if it's such a great thing, and if consumers and individuals have a very clear understanding of what they could get, and private sector and the government wants it, well, why is it so hard? Why we ain't moving faster? Well, turns out it's not easy. If it was easy, we'd have done it already, right? But those same questions I was raising earlier about the challenges associated with infrastructure, regulatory policy and framework, how we resource these initiatives, interagency coordination, the cultural changes we would have to put into how we run projects and work, it's almost antithetical to how we run business in our government and public sector today. You know, developing, as Minister said, you know, put something out there, get multiple people to work on it. If it fails, you know, you learn and you move on. You can imagine doing that? Minister in Ministry of Planning, you can imagine doing that? Oh my goodness, the Public Service Commission will have your head, you know? And these are the challenges that we really do have. And of course, there's a limited framework, but I think that we could develop that, but we have to get it more than at a framework level. We have to really land it at sort of where we're actually working together. So let me say that the role of government, and I also have a slide for the role of private sector. One of the first things I think we need is a great vision. A great shared vision. Not one person's vision, not this team's vision, but a vision that we can all share and buy into. And work must be done to actually shape that vision, sell that vision, and have other people telling you, well, that is the vision that we all have for this thing. Second thing, of course, is, you see this thing about harmonizing regulatory frameworks? I've had the pleasure of attending some CARICOM meetings, trying to get agreement on policies and frameworks is a Herculean, and I'm not exaggerating, undertaking. And I have a lot of respect for the people in the CARICOM Secretariat, because our structure is we have fantastic, fantastic professionals who look at things from every single angle. And mitigate every single risk. And it takes months, 18, 16, 24 months to get one framework negotiated. We have to do better than that. We don't have the time for that. So we'd have to invent a different way of looking at this. But you can. This is a great opportunity because you could take it into the digital space. It's different from what we were doing before, and isolate it and put a real amazing team together. And we could talk about that in a minute as well. I feel I'm going to run over time, by the way. So you all will have to run me out, or you'll sit there and suffer through it. The other things I'll quickly run through is promoting skills. This is where I think we have this wonderful opportunity. Certainly in Trinidad, we have this army of scholars. We've paid for their education, the university education. They come out of university, they're bright-eyed, they're bushy-tailed. I remember how we felt just first graduating. And it's a really delicious opportunity to sort of bring them into projects like this. They'll be excited. It's purposeful work. And Lord knows we need their creativity. Lord knows we need their different way of thinking. And it's a form of leadership that we have to learn to embrace. Many of us, slightly gray hairs and stuff like that. I'll run through the others quickly. Foster more public-private partnerships. I think that that's going to be important. And I think that one thing I would love everybody to understand, the private sector open. We ready. Give us a half a signal, we there. Right? You don't have to give us a full signal, So I think that you will find a lot of real beyond interest, I would say, desire, commitment to shape the space with the public sector. Of course, we have to be open to enhancing these cross-border data flows. We spoke about it, data privacy. How do we begin to trust one another and the security measures we have on either end? We have to establish digital integration, support institutions, raise awareness, I've talked about that, and of course, lead by example. So leading by example is a tricky one, right? Because you almost have to ask our public sector to behave more like they're creating something that you usually see in the private sector, which is good and bad, if you understand what I mean. The good part of it is, that's kind of working together. There's, you do the work to establish trust. You do the work to you lead teams in an open space. Bad, there's places where, people relate to the private sector as, profit-driven. And if you're doing this because you've got some ulterior profit-driven motive, well, it go fall apart, right? So, I know this is clearly a fine line, right? But I think the private sector is becoming increasingly conscious and purpose-based. And an initiative like this is perfect because, everyone can see if we don't do this, we are going to be left behind. If we lag, the rest of the world will pass us. But we have this lovely opportunity to work together to leapfrog where we are. It's like the most credible, brilliant opportunity for us to break the shackles of our past and create our own future. So anyway, I won't belabor that anymore. From a private sector perspective, collaboration, partnerships. I think that some of us, that's like just what we do. But we have to be open to more of this, even with people whom we might consider to be our competitors. Innovation and investment. Again, investing in innovation. One could criticize some of the of not doing a lot of R&D research. I think part of it is our scale. We're adopters, but that's why I like ChatGPT and AI. It's like this huge playing field leveler. You can do so much innovation and so much because it's out there, it's free, and it's just our creativity. We have the opportunity to be like the best users of AI because we are most creative. Let somebody program the thing, but we could use it. Advocacy and thought leadership, what we're doing here today. Skill set development, I think that's a great a place to get support for initiatives like this from the private sector, sharing some skills and sharing people with an initiative like this. Investment in infrastructure, I know that I see Lisa Egard here from TSTT, but the private sector in the telecommunications sector has been leading with infrastructure investments. And then customer education and digital literacy. Of course, these are roles. So this is actually what I wanted to talk the most about. How can we be successful at this? I started off by saying the first thing we need is a vision. So guess what? I asked ChatGPT for a vision. ChatGPT's vision. I think it's pretty damn good as a starting point. Empowering a connected and digitally integrated CARICOM. Our vision is to create a connected and digitally integrated CARICOM where technology serves as the catalyst for economic growth, regional cooperation, and social advancement. I find this is very good. We envision a vibrant ecosystem that leverages digital technologies to overcome barriers, foster innovation, and unlock the immense potential of our diverse nations. I find so. I mean, that's almost like good to go right there. I mean, diverse? You don't find we diverse? Okay, maybe we should take some trips together. So, coming back to what I was saying earlier, we hear and, this is what we want to do, this is what I want to do. The idea of having something that we can all share as a vision, I have to tell you, is absolutely essential. And, sort of looping back to sort of, let's say, Neil and Massey, now a conscious company becoming a healing organization. There's been a transformation that we've had to take on as a group of companies. And it's 100 years old. It means longer than independence, right? And if we did not have a vision that every employee shares, trust me, we've been through some painful adjustments, starting with breaking down command and control and top-down leadership so that we can actually be leaders who better serve people. This is hardest for those of us who were in the highest positions in the organization because, we've learned to lead in a particular way. If it were not for a shared vision and a shared sense of purpose, we wouldn't have done the work that we had to do as leaders to lead differently. And a lot of us painful coaching, feedback sessions was not easy, but that created the space for the transformation that we are experiencing today. And so there's a selflessness that's required in this vision, is a grounding it in purpose for our region, not ego for any single one of us. And I know most of you here are already there, but we have to be very careful how we language it. It's the type of vision that needs to surpass any political tenure. So, there are ministers here, there are governments here represented. If in 5 years, 10 years, you're no longer there, the vision must live on. So it's a vision that has to be shared with our opposition politicians. It's a vision that has to be shared with our people, our organizations, with all of us. It has to be ours. It cannot belong to a particular party, leader, or person. That's not a shared vision. And if it is, make no mistake, you'll make progress, and then it will be knocked down. So that's big key success factor number one. The second is resource allocation, and I was making a joke earlier about, where will we get the resources from? This is not cheap, whether it be infrastructure or whether it is putting together the project teams to take on the development of systems, to rewrite regulations. This is a big lift, yeah? And yeah, we need to get together. We need to help one another with resources. You know, many times we set off to do it separately. So Trinidad will do a thing, Barbados will do a thing, Jamaica will do a thing, Guyana will do a thing. And, you know, quite frankly, we are all kind of recreating teams doing the same kind of thing, but different, instead of leveraging the sparse resources and capabilities that we have throughout. I mean, we have amazing talent within the region. We just don't have plenty, right? So there's something to be said about how we choose to resource, because we have to recognize that this is a multi-year commitment. And again, go back to the shared vision. Population, your voting population, your private sector partners, your employees have to recognize we are committing to something that's, you know, when I talk about the transformation at Massey, it didn't, in 2023, we started in 2011. It's like 12 years in progress, right? And it's still in progress. These things take time. I put change management up here, and I talked to Jackie Wilson about this. So we're talking about significant and uncomfortable change. Tariq, you mentioned it. Make no mistake, this is our biggest challenge. Because we have to work differently in the teams doing this work, but we also have to work with people. And agencies, you're going to ask them to work in ways they've never worked before. And they'll need to understand why and what's in it for them, and go through all the spaces that any of us have gone through in any major change program. And sometimes some of us walk away from it because we can't make that change. And that has to be okay too. So really putting into this project, you know, the expectation that change is hard. Not expecting that we could just do the project and do things technically, and then we roll it out and people will do it. It don't work so. Fourth is this unwavering commitment, and I mentioned that before when I talked about the shared vision. We got to build a way that the commitment to this is universal. Okay, yeah, they will have some people who do agree, who think it's stupidness, etc. Okay, yeah, but you get my point. It cannot be one entity or one party sponsoring it. We have to reach out. We have to enroll our entire country, our entire region. I know you know this makes sense, right? But I also know it's not so easy, right? Because when you have entrenched differences that go deep, it really takes something to actually build a vision and to be so generous and so selfless that you could actually bring together people who are sworn enemies. This is what we have to do. You know, we'll get somewhere, we'll get a good start, but the apple cart will get upset. And we can't make this, well, if we do it, it will happen, and if they come, it won't happen. That will lose the game. And that's just not what something like this should ever be about. Strong program management. I said, this is complex stuff. You have people from Estonia, from other countries where they've taken on projects like this. This is complex stuff. We need good, strong project and program managers who have leadership capability and capacity to run multidiscipline teams like this. On Friday, I was asked what were the 3 biggest lessons I've learned in my career at Massey, and for me, the biggest one was working with different people. And, you know, on a team like this, you're going to have people who don't see it your way, think differently. Thank God, celebrate they think differently. I know I struggle with it. I used to like people to agree with me. I've made mistakes because some people said we shouldn't do something. I really felt we should do it. I know Richard Young knows what I'm talking about. And I think this is one of those projects that's so important. We really have to set aside ego, and we really have to call forth our best leadership and recognize that, all of us need help. And as you assemble a project like this, mix into that project leadership training and development, mix into that project coaches to help the team work well together. This is just so important. It's worth that type of investment. And the last part of it is competency, which I think is a straightforward point. We need competent people, but they're not in large supply. And so I go to my last slide that says, the old African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to honestly look ourselves in the face and the eyes and decide, do we want to go fast or do we want to go far? Fast has its advantages. Fast is, I'm limiting the complexities, and we're going to go it alone, and we're going to get something done, and we go look to them. We go look to see if anybody else nearby soon enough. But don't pretend you're going together, but you're really going alone. If you're going alone, they put your hand up. People are sorry, but I really feel I need to go alone on this one. But I think we all can appreciate the opportunity that we have if we go together. But then there is this last Chinese proverb that says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So let's make sure that jump high, jump low, go alone, go together, we take that single step and get started on this path responsibly. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, those who organized this afternoon's agenda, be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. Mr. Gervais Warner, President and Group CEO, Massey Group. Thank you, sir. We move immediately to the moderated discussion, and I will use the short versions of the introductions to our panel. The session will be moderated by Devendra Ramnarine, Digital Transformation Advisor, Ministry of Digital Transformation of Trinidad and Tobago, who has worked with the Commonwealth Secretariat UK as head of its Digital Divide program and has been an advisor to Commonwealth governments around the world with their digital transformation agendas. Joining the panel are Herbert Paguas, who is currently the Executive Director of the National Agency for E-Government and the Information Society of Uruguay. He is responsible for coordinating and managing the different services provided by such an office, and prior to this was the Secretary to the Chambers of Senators at the Uruguayan Parliament. We'll be joined virtually by Honey Dakane, Professor of Practice at McMaster University, who is a policy leader with expertise in public sector renewal and governance reform, and works with government leaders to create enabling conditions for digital transformation to succeed. And back here in the room and joining the panel will be Sam Sickert, Managing Partner at Digital Nation, an advisory network originating from Estonia to build future-ready digital societies around the world. He's led the digital government and digital policy area in the Republic of Estonia for 10 years, most recently as the government CIO from 2017 to 2022. Having set the stage with the speakers earlier on this afternoon, it's my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to invite the panel to join us on stage. Please welcome Devendra Ramnarine, Herbert Paguas, Sim Sickert in the room, and joining us virtually, Honey Dakane. Devendra, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Wendell. Please. Man. How you doing, Troy? How are you? Nice to meet you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And after that very energetic presentation, I hope we can keep that energy up. Okay, so what we're planning to do this afternoon for the next few minutes is really a moderated discussion with 3 panelists. I'm just checking that Honey is up. Are we seeing her? So we have two panelists in person and 1 virtual. Okay, so I'll start and hopefully, yes, there she is now. Thank you. All right, so what we wanted to do was to add to the conversation by adding some perspectives from 3 countries, Uruguay through Urbot, North America which is Canada, through Honey, and Estonia, Europe, with Sim. So what we are planning to do is to ask some questions that hopefully would add information that will be useful for the consideration of the parties here. But before we do that, I wanted to start with a Mentimeter example. So if that goes up on the screen, if you can simply use your phone, yeah, and access the QR code, or if you go to menti.com and type in 466304446, you should be able to vote. It's a very, very simple question, and you just need to take about 15 seconds to do so. So if you could do that. And the question should be, when you get onto there, is what single word would best describe a fully digital Caribbean? What single word, just 1 single word, that will fully describe or best describe a fully digital Caribbean? Is everybody able to access the menti.com? Yeah? Okay, we're going to close off the poll in about 10 seconds. Okay, so let's consider the poll closed. Could we bring the results up on the screen? I need to enlarge that quite a bit. So based on the words that you would have chosen, the size of the words would be indicative of, I guess, the number of votes. So what appears to be bigger, could you spread it out a little bit bigger so connected and all the edges fill the entire screen, and put it up on the middle as well? Okay, so the first word that we see coming out of this is connected, integrated, inclusive, seamless, and then we start getting a little bit smaller: revolutionary, effective, efficient, empowered, interoperable. And those seems to be all the ones that I can read, so the others are less critical. Yeah. So I think based on the words that we're seeing there, I think the message that our 3 previous speakers would have conveyed seemed to have created the effect we wanted. So this is about creating a connected, integrated, inclusive, seamless CARICOM experience using ICT. So in that context, we wanted to chat a little bit with Urbot, and then we'll go on to speak to Honey and then Sim, to get some perspectives from the point of view of Uruguay. So question is a little bit long, so I'll read it. Uruguay is the sole representative from the Latin American and Caribbean region for the Digital Nations Collective, a position that recognizes the country as a world leader in digital government. And that collective includes Estonia, Israel, Korea, New Zealand, UK, Canada, Uruguay, Mexico, Portugal, and Denmark. So some very serious heavy hitters and leaders in the world. Can you tell us a bit more about your country and the systems which enable, nurture, and promote your national digital agenda?
Thanks, Davidra. If you allow me, I'm going over there. So that's fine. That's okay. Well, it's a great honor to me to be here with you, representing my country. Thank you to Trinidad and Tobago and IDB for the invitation. First of all, I would like to remember one of our one of people that inspire us, and he is Lord Palmerston, because Gervais make me think about it. Palmerston said that countries doesn't have permanent enemies or permanent friends. Countries has permanent interests. So you make me think about it. To put in place, this is my country, very south. We have 3.5 million people, 12 million cattle with digital traceability. Yeah. This is our territory, and our capital is Montevideo, and we speak Espanol. So I'm making a great effort to be here. And we have 50,000 million euros on our GPT. But we are a little country between two big brothers, Argentina and Brazil. And we think and we thought that we can be open to the world by being stable, serious, and with high quality. Of course, we have some issues here internal in our country. We have two of the most oldest political parties in the world with 187 years. Of course, we discuss each other, but of course. But I think that we are the country with more public policies in the region. That gave us institutionality for the digital transformation, and that's a highlight, the institutionality of a country, the institutionality of a region. Public policies that goes across different governments, different colors of politicians. Multi-level coordination is essential to achieve results. Uruguay is a leader in regulatory framework in every aspect. For example, we allowed the divorce by the only will of women in 1913. We allowed women to vote in 1932. And we started digital transformation in the middle of the 2000s, in the middle of a great crisis in our region. But we were sure that digital transformation and regulatory framework need to evolve together. As public servers, we move into public law, which is the rule of speciality. That means that we only are available to do what the law says. So we have to improve our regulatory framework constantly. This is some example of regulatory and institutionality, infrastructure, and community. Because we were giving more services to the citizenships, we have to give them more guarantees. Rights, but guarantees to the people. Today, everybody asks us, what are we doing with all the data that the states have? And the answer is to decision-making and improve services, of course, but we need to transparent what we are doing with them. Again, more citizens guarantees to trust in our solutions. Without trust, we cannot reach people with new solutions or digital transformations. We are employees of the people. We are employees of citizens. And we are here to give them efficiency, transparency, accountability, and the technology is a driver for that. It's not about technology by technology. It's technology as a driver to change the people's life, to make it easier. The state have essential duties as efficiency, accountability, transparency, and of course the technology is a better way to achieve that. These are examples of laws that my country has: data protection, access to public information, digital ID, electronic signature, information security, interoperability, digital services, national digital health records, telemedicine, digital anonymous societies, telecommunication, and accessibility. But to improve our laws, we need to encourage, I think, our parliaments, because I was part of a parliament of my country, and we need to encourage the speed of the laws of technology. We recently hear about ChatGPT. The technology is way faster than the regulatory framework. So we have to encourage our parliaments to pass the laws to allow us to give people solutions. Not only this, because national solutions are not the solution. Sorry for the same word. I think that international standards is where we are going. I've been speaking about infrastructure. Uruguay, the internet coverage in Uruguay is about 91 households with high-speed internet, and 83% of the people uses internet daily. Connectivity is a must when we are talking about digital transformation, and we can achieve it with public policies. Again, public policies that allow us to achieve these kind of solutions. And of course, digital services. As I said, we are people employees. We need to do the people life easier. People doesn't have to know what are all the state offices. People normally have one problem. Here's the person, here's the office, here's the highway, there is interoperability, and here's the problem. We have to make the contact easy between the states and the people. So giving the interoperability, giving services, giving them our government as platform. We are here to leave no one behind. Devendra, I don't know if do you have...
Yes, I did. Yes, you did. I just had one follow-up question on that, because I think you answered the first two questions. And the final question had to do with, given the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the education of our young people, whether or not you think that we should switch from the traditional university-type education or that formal-type process to go more into competency-based training, where the students leaving secondary school actually equipped with the capability to develop code, do software, create software, etc. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah. This is the management of the pandemic in my country, because digital transformation gave us the tools to manage the pandemic, and we were we are the best 15 countries in the world managing the pandemic. Why? Because of digital transformation and because of the digital innovation. In 15 days, we developed a COVID app with a private-public effort, and we developed this. There's a monitor to transparent all the data when we are fighting against the pandemic. We show people data, we show people transparency. You can see active cases, death, beds, occupation of beds in hospitals, ventilators, etc. And we developed the vaccination agenda that allows the people to access the vaccine closer to their homes and faster on time in a first in and out system. But as you question, I would like to answer your question. In 2007, we developed El Plan Ceibal. It's in Spanish, and it's one laptop per child. It's the first country in Latin America that gave one, in the world, I think, that gave one laptop per child to our children. So in the pandemic, we can continue giving them education without locking down our country. They receive education in their homes the same way the rich ones and the poor ones, because they all they have one laptop per child, and the education works online in that moment. That allowed us to continue with our education to our children and continue with our economic movement in a very, very, very complicated time. So this is part of what we did in digital transformation in pandemic. We developed a national plan, a website, the app, the COVID-19 certificate, follow-up and tracing of cases, everything that we could, we did. And this is the Plan Ceibal that I was talking about. All school connected with optical fiber, and we are working in digital natives and digital citizenships, because people has to be confident with them, not only with the technology, with them. If you are not confident with you, when the government gave you an internet solution, you will not be able to resolve it. We can think when we are going to a, burger store, and we can choose a burger in a totem. And only that make us nervous. So is that the burger with cucumber? Is that the burger with ketchup or mayonnaise or something? Now imagine when we are alone in our homes, 10 p.m., trying to do the declaration of taxes. Maybe you will prefer go the other day to a person 101. And that's one of our obligations, to give the people digital citizenships and make our children digital natives, to improve our digital transformation. This is a little video of my country to continue knowing it, and then just 2 words to finish, because I don't have the timer there. Can you put the... Nope. Someone can put play on the...
icon. You will find their biography,
Made in Uruguay innovates, surprises, and advances. We're the second largest producer of clean energy in the world, and we believe that the future of energy is in electric mobility and green hydrogen. That's why we developed H2U. By becoming a leader in renewable energies, we'll achieve carbon neutrality by 2050.
We were the first in the world to give every child in school their own laptop. We are third in the world in per capita software exportation. We are leaders in e-government in the region and have integrated the D9. We have the largest fiber optic and telephone coverage in the region. We are advancing in 5G and in sustainable production, as well as low-emission technologies, in order to develop the circular economy and Industry 4.0.
Our entrepreneurial system in information technology is more than 30 years old. Today, large companies such as Mercado Libre, Globant, BASF, or Nestle have chosen us to set up their factories. Volkswagen chose Uruguay to launch its electric car in Latin America, while the Uruguayan unicorn D-Local is breaking records on Wall Street. We develop and test the most popular video games on the planet. We produce orbiting satellites and sophisticated medical devices. We organized the first Robotics World Cup, and we made it to the podium.
We produce a great deal of scientific knowledge. We put our brains to work. For 30 years, Uruguay has been planting millions of trees to develop a sustainable forest industry in harmony with the environment and to protect our biodiversity. We complement this with our work in livestock production, capturing greenhouse gases. Meanwhile, our native forests are growing year after year because we're nature friendly.
We have evolved made in nature to produce the best meat in the world. We were pioneers in deploying a traceability system that allows us to identify and follow each one of our 12 million cattle, which are the fruit of a unique genetic line with 400 years of history. We bring quality food to the world, such as meat, fish, soy, malt, rice, citrus, wheat, dairy, and multi-award-winning wines.
We are so disruptive that we are selling caviar to Russia, coffee to Colombia, olive oil to Spain, and genetically modified mice to Japan. We breed movie horses, produce high-end car leathers and wool, and textiles that end up on the cover of Vogue, being worn by Greta or in the windows of Chanel, Cole, or Stella McCartney.
Our creativity allows us to export design in fashion, architecture, graphics, and jewelry. Our talent and landscapes are reflected in series and films that we produce for Amazon, Netflix, Disney, HBO, and Sony. One of the Rolling Stones gave his daughters a Uruguayan lute guitar to learn. Made in Uruguay leaves you electric.
We have spirit and a way of thinking. We are determined. It's our time. It's Uruguay's time. A country with a human scale, creative, hardworking, serious, relaxed, that breathes freedom at every turn and conquers the world with each quality product that we produce.
Unusual, free. Test Uruguay.
So I think that collaboration, thank you. Just for a finish, I think that collaboration, coordination is a must, because there are no more countries as we studied when we are young. Because technology doesn't know about limits, about geographical limits. Nowadays, we are sons of the world, but in our countries, we have to teach our children how to be citizens of the world. So thank you for your invitation.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, thanks very much for that. Clearly, Uruguay has a lot to offer and has done some very, very innovative things. I hope we still have Honey online. If we can bring her up. Hi. Okay, so I need to just give a little preamble. Honey is from Canada, professor of practice at McMaster's University, but I just need to read a little bit to create some context for the question. Given your perspective on digital citizenship from the Canadian context, you already have several achievements throughout your career, designing Canada's first agile governance pilot, leading the development of an introductory digital curriculum for 286,000 plus Government of Canada public servants, and enshrining Ontario's digital service standards in landmark legislation, the Simpler, Faster, Better Services Act 2019. I really like the simple English and the name of that act. What underpins your thinking as you design initiatives and services to empower citizens to operate in and influence the digital space?
Thank you for that question. I want to confirm you could hear me okay first before I continue. Perfect. Okay. And so I tend to talk about digital government as an essential shift in how government operates. So my entire career has been primarily focused inside the public service, trying to change the way it works, trying to persuade people that the real mission, and remind them that the real mission is to really about serving the people of Canada, people, businesses, communities, making life easier for them. And people tend to forget that when you're deep inside a bureaucracy, because sometimes it feels that you're just serving a process rather than doing something that has an impact internally. I'm going to share my screen momentarily just to share a couple of examples. That's okay. And so I'm just going to, here we go. I feel like I've lost my screen here. Oh, here we are. Okay, can folks see my screen or no? Okay. Can people see my screen? Devendra is my. Oh, that can't be good. Let me. Okay, I'm gonna try that again. Okay. Oh, perfect. How about that? That should perfect. Thank you. And so, starting with users and delivering together is at the heart of like Ontario and Canada's digital strategy altogether. And so we wanted to articulate a statement of values, like what drives our decisions in government, what also needs to drive the change that we want to see. Because at the end of the day, this is about people who are accessing government, not just when they're calling somebody or trying to line up to get a service, but at 3 a.m., trying to figure out how to get unemployment insurance or pension or worry about where they're going to send their kids to school. And so we kind of think about, we precision all of this about making things simpler and faster. And simpler and faster are the words that we associate with technology, but better is also this other part where we start to talk about actually achieving something that making life easier for people and making sure that nobody gets left behind, because the service has to work for everybody, not just people who could pay for it. And so we need to make sure that everybody could participate in and access any of the services that we provide. And ultimately, that journey is essentially about sharing that power. And internally, we also tried to make sure that this is something that it's internalized. And so what we have also done was enshrine this in legislation so that when people think about our services, it's not just about what we're doing for our boss, but essentially, how does this make life easier for people? And we passed 2 omnibus bills to also update other legislation. So it's not really just about the landmark legislation. We also got rid of a lot of the other outdated legislation to make sure that it's meaningful for others. And we made life easier for public servants to also serve others. Great. Yes. Of course. That's okay. Mhm. 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 Okay. I love this question, and I feel that it gives me an opportunity to share a framework that around citizen engagement that was also developed by a fellow Canadian, Don Lanahan. Don developed it as it's a spectrum of public participation, but it's essentially to ask the government to be upfront and transparent with the public and also internally about how much input they really want, how much power they're actually sharing with the public, because sometimes we don't ask for input, we just inform people about our decision, which is government's prerogative, and it's usually the minimum thing that happens when government communicates online. Consulting, sometimes we ask for feedback as well, usually a very light touch through a feedback form or town hall, mostly to say that, yes, we'll take your input, but it's not going to change the way government is going to make a decision. But then sometimes we also challenge ourselves, well, maybe there are situations where we ask government to, and we as government actually ask people, invite them to share their views, and then we report on what we heard and how each thing that was done was taken into account in terms of government decision making. Canada is usually in that space, kind of trying to balance sort of just informing all the way to involved. And one particular instance that comes to mind was in the development of a Canadian emergency response benefit during COVID. Government needed to act quickly. It wasn't going to be time to consult, but even without launching a formal consultation, there was an understanding that you need to deliver at the speed of need, because in March 2020, at the height of the pandemic, our Service Canada call center received maybe in that 1 week, a year's worth of calls. Our sites were crashing because people were losing their jobs and they were sent home and they were feeling very uncertain about the future. And that was an opportunity for government to come together, think about the need that needed to be solved, develop something that would never happen, to be honest, on a regular situation. And so a program being developed within 2 weeks, policy and delivery teams working together all at once, that's usually not the norm. That type of collaboration usually is very consecutive and linear, but instead kind of goes back. That type of balancing of, I guess, of government being paternalistic versus too much empowerment also is something that, in Canada, always kind of takes into account, because ideally there is that relationship that you're always kind of wondering, how are you doing? How are you serving people better? And Canadians love to give feedback when something isn't working, and when it is quite it is rather neat, because you do want that feedback for better or worse.
For the final question, and this is on the issue of trust and legitimacy of government. There's definitely a balancing act in service design between relieving humans of the burden of choosing and nudging them in the path of self-empowerment, particularly as you start putting things online. But can the notion of data sovereignty help address the balance? And what other approaches can government use as checks and balances in their service as digital guardians that can build trust and legitimacy? Very academic type questions, I guess in keeping with your theme.
Experience has been trying to look at our own outdated policies. And so Canada has some outdated privacy legislation that's created an imbalance between government and private organizations' ability to use data to serve the public. And so our legislation, the way it's set up, encumbers government's ability to responsibly use data, but it doesn't hinder the other actors. And so there was a gap initially between what government can offer to the public and what the private sector can offer. And that lowered trust in the public sort of confidence in the government's ability to deliver services that would be expected in any given day. And however, the shift as well has has also been in terms of trust for the private sector, because sometimes there's too much leverage that's accorded to service providers in the private sector. And so the legislation outlines, for example, like characteristics of notice, informed consent, but not so much on the rights, responsibilities, and expectations of the private sector, especially when they're collecting people's data. And so what we want to do with our legislative regime is to balance that so that there should also be some burden on the sector that's collecting the data to explain why somebody has a good reason to consent. I guess at the end of the day, what I really want to say is that yes, technology changes fast, expectations change fast, and it is hard to keep up. But what government ultimately needs to keep up with is not tech, but people. And in part because of technology, people's behavior and expectations have changed. And so the simple apps that do a lot for us have made people less tolerant of complex, very paper-heavy processes. And we have devices that constantly steal our attention, that make it hard to persist through administrative burden. And that's pretty much the cost right now that government has to contend with, and we need to make it easier for people to engage with us. And at the same time, people are relying on government to make other services trustworthy, to hold other sectors into account. And so those things matter when government thinks about public services.
Opportunity to ask questions to the panel in the end. So I wanted to switch, so thanks, honey. Wanted to switch to Sim, and that's not a tone of familiarity, that's her name. I wanted to switch to Sim. Sim, we did hear some things this morning, but for this particular session, we wanted to explore a little bit more on the experiences of other collective groups of countries that would have come together to try and enable and empower digital citizenship. So maybe you could chat a little bit of what you would have seen in your travels and in your work around the world as to what groups of countries, like what we're trying to do at CARICOM, to work together to enable this Caribbean digital citizenship. So maybe you can chat a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, digital citizenship is, to me, is always like a tough and loaded word. What does it mean, right? So, I mean, to me, it really means that, look, it's really about being a citizen in our time and age, right? In a society that's inherently more digital like that, right? So how do we empower that? How our country is going about this? I think we've already touched upon quite a few things. I mean, there's the literacy element, digital literacy, and raising basically the ability to be an active member of society in digital age. There's the whole element in terms of what governments can do, in terms of their service delivery and design, what Hani talked about. I think the third really big part that I see around the world, and that's a space for collaboration, is everything and anything around trust, that Hani actually started to get us into a bit. I mean, when you look at, all the way, I come from Europe, right, European Union, right, it's infamous GDPR and all the regulations, the frameworks to really have trust between different countries, private sectors, governments. I mean, some are figuring out the sort of framework, how to exactly build these elements of that say, hey, you can be trusted. If I send data to you, for example, I mean, that's clearly an emerging space. And we see this not just in Europe, which is like, perhaps the most advanced collective of countries in that sort of sense. I mean, honestly, we talk about a single market in the full of Europe, but this sort of the same trust frameworks are emerging other places as well. So putting in place the conditions of mutual trust. Secondly, interestingly enough, I think a lot of it comes down to somehow putting those rights and frameworks into practice. We all know that law is only as good as it's applied, right? So even something like a privacy regulation, it's only as good as, for example, there are tools that people can use to manage their personal data. So that's where I see a lot of, let's say, cool stuff happening in different countries where, giving people really honestly features built into services where they can know what's happening to the data, they can control what's happening to the data, they can really limit to what's happening to the data. So for example, that, even if your medical record is shared with the next doctor, that you can effectively control if it is shared or not. Things like that are being picked up, perhaps less collectively yet, but at least sort of like a direction where tools are evolving. And there's also quite a lot of, I think, technological innovation space for that. I mean, privacy-enhancing technologies, for example, coming into this space. Now, the last thing is actually, I think, a group of challenges where there's understanding that we need solutions, but we don't really have them yet. Things like misinformation. Things like how can we trust AI, or let's say, how can we trust images of us being here in the age of AI and deep fakes? How can we trust, for example, that exactly you are really you online, right? So that's experimentation spaces where things are still happening in the sovereign silos, but not enough collectively. So long story short, I think in digital citizenship space, I would say collaborative space is still largely untapped except for the regulatory stuff. But regulatory is only as good as it's actually been applied.
Okay. And if you were to take, what you would have learned from these experiences, and perhaps if we were asked to give some very specific advice on applying those learnings to the CARICOM single ICT space, is there anything that you'll want to tell the group?
I think, well, first of all, there's perhaps more low-hanging fruits than in this space that we're talking about now. I think we have a bit of philosophical topic to finish us off a bit, right? But if I were to dream, then in terms of collaboration, there's clearly some elements where none of us will figure it out by ourselves for the reasons of talent shortage, for the reasons of otherwise. So I brought up deep fakes, okay? So how can we trust that the video is authentic or not, right? Which is a massive problem that nobody has cracked in the world yet. What are the odds that somebody in Estonia is going to crack that? What are the odds that somebody in Trinidad and Tobago here is going to crack that? Small. Collaboratively, we might have a chance. So this is my point of saying that if we look down the road, I think taking some of these hard trust issues and also even, let's say, experimenting together is one angle to think about. But that is, experimentation is our only chance, basically, like that. Secondly, I think there's a collaborative space in areas where our mutual force is clearly bigger, if not the only thing that actually makes us have a shot for a solution. I mean, you brought up data sovereignty with Honey, right? Mm-hmm. In cloud world, it's still a mess. I mean, we worked with all the global cloud providers in Estonia to get them to offer a suitable sovereign type of hybrid cloud offer for us. Estonia, being an advanced digital government sense, having only 1.3 million people, they couldn't care less. Having Caribbean countries come together, having European countries come together, that's a chance that they might hear at least a bit. So this is my point of saying that again, I mean, some of those trust issues next to some of the bigger players of the world, right? Or next to even bigger countries of the world, joining together for that is pretty much the only shot of getting some solution done. And my last bit, when we talk about trust in this space, it really echoes with what is our topic here today. I mean, at least from my point of view, is that it all starts from digital identity and trusted data flows. If we fix that as a collective already, then we have a good base to crack the next things.
Okay, and the final sort of question has to do with the change that's involved in trying to create the CARICOM single ICT space. I mean, the concept has been around for a long time. We don't seem to have made significant progress in it. Where would you focus your change effort? Is it just in government? Do you go to the individual person in their home? Do you go to schools? Do you go to public spaces and announce it, to the countries or the people that we're going to be doing this? How do we initiate the change that is required? And our feature speaker also alluded to the challenges in getting change, based on what you have learned around the world.
Well, let's not even go to the world. From what I've learned from our small Estonia is that, look, just like the marvelous speaker said, it starts from the first step. Each time we've done something, it's taking that attitude. Let's just start building things. Let's start doing things. And then from that, we have a chance and shot in this world, right? So this is my point of saying that, like how do you start? Where does the ignition come from? Doesn't matter. Sometimes it even comes from the Houses of Parliament. Sometimes. So wherever it comes from, basically our point is to recognize that and build on that and empower and take those steps in a way. So in the context of not being sort of theoretical here, I think what I really have enjoyed today, I mean, and I'm really hopeful that it leads to some concrete steps, is that there is some sort of ideas floating around with which you can start. Just start. That's what it takes.
So just start. So thanks for that. So what we wanted to do for the last few minutes of this particular session is to open up to the audience the opportunity to ask some questions to Herbert in terms of the Uruguay experience and the fact that they continue to be one of the leaders in that region, to Honey and the Canadian experience, or to Sim on both the Estonian experience as well as the experience in Africa and the other parts of the world that Sim has been working in. So I just want to open it up if anybody has any questions that they want to throw to the panelists. You just need to put your hand up and proceed.
It's for free.
Only today.
Yeah. $100 to this guy.
Sorry, do we have a microphone that we can share?
There's one coming behind. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Rodney Taylor, Secretary General, CTU. And because we were placing a lot of emphasis on the single ICT space, CARICOM single ICT space, I wanted to know specifically which countries you are more closely collaborating with in Latin America.
In the case of Uruguay?
Yes, on digital collaboration and cooperation.
Well,
what is the framework for that?
Well, thank you. We are collaborating with all over the world because I'm the only one, as Devindra said, of South America here. And we have, in our region, we have two sub-regions, South America and the Caribbean one. But Uruguay integrates a lot of boards in the region. For example, Red Hyatt, that Miguel is part of Miguel Porrua from IDB is part of them. ILAC is another one that Uruguay has the presidency for the next 2 years. Digital nations with Estonia, Canada, Denmark, Israel, etc. Open government partnership with a lot of countries, and well, we integrate a lot of international boards and organizations, and we are pleased to collaborate to everybody. And we have some tools to direct this collaboration because last week, I think I spoke with Miguel about that in the Red Hyatt, and the Red is trying to organize the collaboration because we love to ask us for collaboration, but it's kind of messy when every country came because you have national governments, regional governments, third level governments. So we are trying to organize this collaboration, but we have links with a lot of countries. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I build on that? But perhaps just to continue from your question in a way. But in Uruguay, you guys have done practical steps. With some countries even more, despite all the big networks in a way. Which countries, or how do you choose them? Like, you know, you have a driver's license with Argentina, right? So
yeah. No.
How have these come about? I think that's the heart of your question, right?
Okay. We have a Mercosur with 5 countries in the very small region. Small because Brazil and Argentina are huge, but small region. It's an organization that encourages the collaboration between us, between our countries. But we are always looking what the European Union is doing. We are always looking what Estonia is doing, and United States is doing, and Canada is doing. The first collaboration is between them. We learn, and then we convert us as a hub of innovation in our country. So we are working in a concept called Innovation Hub with a private sector and the public sector. But I don't know if the word is choose. Maybe in sites like this, maybe in 10 minutes I will talk to you and, oh, I have an idea, and then next month we advance together. I don't know if I choose. I think it's kind of, I don't know, the reality principle, I think. For example, Sim saying that we have interoperability, ID interoperability between Argentina and Uruguay, Brazil and Uruguay, Chile and Uruguay. We are pushing the region of ID, transnational digital ID. And nowadays we can operate in the government, in the site of the government of Argentina with our IDs. And the Argentinian people can do the transactions in our site with their IDs.
So what's the connectivity between the systems of the countries?
There are standards, and we are working again. Sorry, Miguel, we are working with the Red Hyatt to the list of trust, because we need some kind of some authority to have to recognize the authentication of all the countries. You have, in my country, the Homeland Security Ministry is the responsible of the ID of the people. But in other countries are other offices. So we are collaborating between all of you to create a great a great place that authenticates the list of the ID of the people, so we can evolve our identity just like Uruguay and Argentina did last year.
Yeah. Questions?
Good afternoon. So you see this happening in all South America, or you expanding this to another regions, or you stay just in the Mercosur area?
Well, I have to spoil it. About the digital, we are working hard with the European Union. Uruguay became the first country outside the European Union to have a digital sign node outside the European Union. We are working with them. The collaboration started in the pandemic because we have 100% of our people have health records, digital health records. And when we started to apply the vaccine to the people, we started to give them a digital certificate of vaccination. And then came the work with the European Union when Uruguay became the first country in Latin America, in America, to have the health pass with the European Union standard. And then we still working, for example, with the Pan American Health Organization with all the vaccine certificate, not only COVID, but all the vaccines in our country and in the region. And we are working with the European Union, with the representation of the European Union in my country, Pablo and Thomas Pospisil, with trying to have in our country the first interoperability ID, digital ID standard. Yeah.
Just before you ask the question, I just wanted to bring Hani into the. I did have a question, Hani, for you. In looking at what Canada would have done with the service quality standards and embedding it in legislation, what was the risk and challenges you had to build into legislation for the public service quality standards that now become the law? Are there any issues around that? How did you get that through the system?
For starters, it wasn't the first thing we did. And
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry.
Hi, yes, thank you. David Snishman from Barbados, and the question is for Hani as well. I think it was said either in your intro or the bio or at some point in time that there was a significant number of persons trained in the public service that you would have had a hand in. And it took me back to the conversation this morning, and one of the speakers said that there's a trio of leadership, capabilities, and mandate that have to work together and work in synergy so that you can get the results at the end of the day for digital transformation. In Barbados, we have strong leadership relative to what it is that we're trying to pursue. We have a fairly clear mandate in terms of what it is that we want to achieve. But I find that some of the difficulty lies within capabilities and building out a public sector that is able to drive, or a combination of public sector and private sector that's able to drive the digital transformation. Can you share more information with us relative to what you did in Canada, relative to building those capabilities of your public sector?
I just had one quick question, and we only have time for final comments, wrap-up comments. The open source content that you referred to, is it that you have to access it on the Canadian platform, or can we move it onto a local platform and reuse it? Let's say Trinidad has Moodle and we want to run it off of Moodle. Can we do that? Okay, thank you. So I guess that offer is open to any country of the Caribbean. Sorry, we do have a...
Perhaps just a very quick comment to add to Hani.
And then the final question after.
On the skilling side. Well, first of all, looking at countries around the world and really echoing what Hani was saying, you can clearly plug into the existing things you do for your civil service anyway. especially in, I think, in governments that have a clear career tracks, right? And somehow, let's say, public service, the skilling initiatives, easy, low-hanging fruits to tap digital parts into in a way. But what we all find is that often we need to complement that by plugging the gaps that there are. And that's why, all the way from British starting with the digital academies and now the Canadian efforts and stuff like that, that basically, I think, quite a lot of formats and including open source sort of skeletons that you can use to actually start bringing, filling your gaps in your country, all the way to masterclasses, for example, all the PSs, right? Those sort of formats.
Okay, so I think to move to the final question.
Thank you very much. And just want to commend you and the team for an excellent presentation thus far. Cleveland Thomas from the International Telecommunications Union, and also the previous speakers we had. The question really surrounds, how do we ensure continuity? Far too often, with all the good plans and excellence and the work of many administrations, and we have many government ministers here representing their governments. And what unfortunately happened is that with all these plans and they start projects, they start a number of initiatives, but for one reason or another, there may be a change in administration. I'm not prophesying anything on anyone. I'm just saying there might be a change, and if there's a change, unfortunately, the things that they have started do not continue in the main. So it would be useful to hear from you after invested so much time, so much resources, et cetera, we have to start it all over again if there's a change. And from your own experiences, can you share with us perhaps what may have happened to ensure continuity for a very long time?
Yeah, so I know. Sorry, just before I answer that, we coming to the close. So if we can use this question to close the session and ask that each of the panelists just give us maybe a 30 to 45 second response and then sort of close.
I know it's difficult. I know it's very difficult. That is why I told you about 187 years political parties in my country. But I think Sim say something in this morning about that. I think if you are able to do a great digital transformation in a lapse of, I don't know, 3-4 years, and it's a major change to the people, I think that it will go over and over other governments. For example, imagine that you can achieve 100% of digital health record of your people. I don't imagine a politician that erased all of that and started with another idea. So I think that concrete plans, achievable objectives, but with a long-term vision. Thank you. Long-term vision. I think these two tips would help you, but I know it's difficult. In Argentina, for example, it happens things like you said. That you said.
Yeah, but you can close at the end. Honey, you want to answer that question and close?
Government delivering at the speed of need, because no politician would ever say that, oh, no, we just need to do something slower, or we don't, or it's okay if this doesn't work. Everybody at their heart of hearts wants to make sure that service is working. And so grounding the work in something concrete, and even if it's small, because when something is working, that builds confidence internally and externally. And the more you're trusted, the more you deliver. And that's sort of the virtuous cycle of trust. And internally, the more you're trusted, the more you deliver, and you rise to the occasion of expectations too.
turn the clocks back, and we have a lot of evidence from all over Latin America, for example, where you had massive regime changes, right? But the second thing, and as a last point, when I looked at sort of digital government excellence, right, talking to people and leaders around the world, the best ones think about this from day one. What if I'm not in the office tomorrow? How will I make the stuff that I'm changing last? And there are lots of things we can do as managers. There's also things we can do as bureaucrats to basically, lock some of the changes in. But managing for this sort of lasting change, I think that's a practice in itself.
Okay, so I think we're out of time. Thanks very much, everybody, for being a good audience. And I would recommend, Sim again didn't ask me to do this, that you do have a look online for Sim's book. There's a lot of practical advice in it, and it's not only for ministers and public officers. It's reading for anybody at all who wants to manage and control, adapt, and utilize ICT to transform their organization or to transform their country. So please have a look for his textbook. It's almost a textbook. It's that good. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, our panelists. And may I just thank Honey Dakney, of course, from Canada, for being with us. Honey, we are moving into the cocktail reception here, so if by chance you wish to have a happy hour with us, feel free to do so in the tranquil comfort of home at this time. Thank you for being with us, Honey. And to our panelists, Herbert, Honey, Sim, and of course, Devendra, thank you very much for leading us in a very engaging discussion here this afternoon into evening time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your engagement, quality of engagement, level of discourse, and of course, your eagerness to be part of this, not just an experiment or an experience, but really purposeful effort to the future. There's a cocktail reception immediately out of that door, correct, folks? We're heading there, and the refreshments are awaiting you. So please take advantage of them. And for all our delegates who will be with us tomorrow, you're requested to be here at 8:45 a.m. We are joining India in our first presentation, and they have a fixed commitment to be with us for 9 a.m. on the clock. And because of that timing, we kindly request that you make your way in a bit earlier. So enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you for supporting the Ministry of Digital Transformation, the IDB, and the CTU in focusing on digital leadership in the Caribbean. I'm Wendell Constantine. Have a good night. Thank you.